The town of Dust Creek was alive with whispers that morning. Horses tied to railings stamped their hooves while shopkeepers paused to gossip. A mail-order bride had arrived on the stagecoach from St. Louis, her face hidden beneath a modest veil. She carried only a small trunk and a Bible, stepping onto the dusty street with trembling hands. The groom-to-be, Marshal Ethan Cole, stood waiting near the saloon doors. Known for his rugged demeanor and unwavering sense of justice, he had faced outlaws without fear. Yet at that moment his heart pounded harder than in any gunfight. Ethan's friends teased him, saying he had no time for love while guarding the frontier. But loneliness had weighed heavily on him, and the idea of a bride seemed like salvation. The townsfolk gathered, curious about the veiled woman who stood silently at his side. Her posture was timid, her head bowed. Some women whispered cruelly. Perhaps she was scarred, perhaps too plain to show her face. Ethan ignored them. He stepped forward, tipped his hat respectfully, and offered his hand. "Welcome to Dust Creek, ma'am," he said softly. She hesitated, then placed her gloved hand in his. They walked together to the small chapel at the edge of town. The preacher stood ready, Bible in hand, his wife preparing flowers on the pews. The bride's silence stirred uneasy thoughts in Ethan. He wondered if she regretted coming. As vows were spoken, her voice cracked when she said, "I do." But her words carried sincerity. When the time came to kiss the bride, she turned her face away, veil trembling. A hush fell across the chapel. Ethan, instead of pressing, gently lifted the edge of the veil, searching her eyes with patience rather than demand. The townsfolk leaned forward, expecting a revelation of ugliness or disfigurement. Instead, as the veil slipped back, Ethan saw the soft curve of her cheek and the fear trembling in her gaze. She had covered her face not out of vanity but out of shame. Ethan whispered so only she could hear, "You're beautiful." She blinked, stunned by the kindness. For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. The congregation, surprised, murmured approval. The preacher's wife dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, while Ethan sealed their vows with a gentle kiss, promising protection, not possession. That evening, they shared supper in Ethan's modest cabin beyond the town. The bride finally revealed her name, Clara. Her story unfolded slowly, as if each word cost her strength. She had grown up in St. Louis, working as a seamstress. A fire had destroyed her family home, leaving her with faint scars along her neck and shoulders. Though barely visible, they made her a target of ridicule. Clara had accepted Ethan's proposal not for adventure, but for the chance at dignity, far from cruel laughter. She confessed this with tears, expecting judgment. Ethan only reached for her hand. "Out here," Ethan said, "scars don't make you weak, they prove you survived." His voice was steady, like the draw of his revolver, but his eyes softened as he spoke. Clara felt warmth spread in her chest. For years she had hidden behind fabric and silence, but now perhaps she could belong. That night, while coyotes howled in the distance and the desert wind rattled the shutters, she prayed silently that Dust Creek would become her true home. Ethan, keeping watch from the porch with his rifle, vowed to defend not only the town but the fragile hope in her eyes. Days turned to weeks. Clara settled into frontier life, mending clothes for neighbors and tending a small garden. The women of the town, once skeptical, began to seek her skill with the needle. Children followed her for stories of the big city. Slowly she lifted her veil less often, until one morning she left it behind entirely. Ethan watched with pride as she laughed with townsfolk, her confidence growing. Yet danger loomed as rumors spread that the notorious outlaw, Silas McGraw, had been spotted near Dust Creek. Ethan tightened his patrols, knowing trouble was riding closer every day. One fateful afternoon, Clara was at the market when riders thundered into town, McGraw and his gang. Shots rang out, windows shattered, and panic filled the air. Ethan confronted them in the street, revolver drawn. Clara, though terrified, refused to run. Instead, she gathered children into the safety of the church cellar, her calm courage guiding them through chaos. From the window she saw Ethan face McGraw in a deadly duel. Dust swirled, guns blazed, and for a moment her heart stopped. When the smoke cleared, McGraw lay defeated, and Ethan, though wounded, stood tall, his badge glinting in the sun. Clara rushed to his side, unafraid of the crowd. She pressed her hands to his bleeding shoulder, tears streaking her cheeks. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice firm despite the fear. Ethan met her eyes, pain etched across his face, but he managed a faint grin. "Didn't I tell you? You're beautiful and strong." In that moment, the people of Dust Creek saw Clara not as a timid stranger, but as a brave woman who had stood with them in their darkest hour. Respect replaced gossip and admiration silenced whispers. Clara had earned her place, veil or no veil. Weeks later, under the wide desert sky, Ethan and Clara renewed their vows quietly on the porch of their cabin. She wore no veil, only a simple dress, her scars glowing faintly like silver threads in the sunlight. Ethan's arm was bound in a sling, but his spirit was unbroken. "Together," he said, "we'll face whatever comes." Clara rested her head against his shoulder, feeling the strength of the man who saw beyond shame. In the vast wild west of the 1800s, where danger lurked behind every canyon, their love became a frontier legend. The Marshal and his veiled bride.